discrimination is permitted. The bill imposes strict and inflexible requirements. The monument must remain in the same jurisdiction, maintain similar provenance and visibility, cannot be moved to museums or cemeteries unless originally placed there, and officials must provide a 90-day notice period, which can be extended indefinitely through litigation. These are not minor procedural hurdles. They limit the discretion of local leaders who are closest to the community they serve. Officials attempting to address safety concerns, redevelopment projects, or community needs would find their hands tied by state mandates. For those of us who believe in local control and limited state interference, this bill is deeply concerning. It centralizes authorities in a way that undermines the ability of local governments to respond quickly and effectively to the needs of their residents. Decisions that were once made thoughtfully by local leaders now risk being delayed, contested, or blocked entirely. We should be empowering local officials to manage public property in a way that reflects the needs and values of their communities, not imposing rigid rules that invite litigation and restrict actions. Our responsibility as legislators is to trust local leaders while providing clear guidance, not to create a framework that complicates their ability to govern effectively. This bill does the opposite. And I heard it was said in committee and here in the well that the judiciary branch has already ruled on this. So why do we need this bill? For this reason, I cannot support Senate Bill 175. I respectfully urge this body to vote no, and I yield the well.
Representative Sanchez is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd rather much be talking about literally any of the other issues pressing our living Georgians today. You know, things about like affordable housing, the fact that thousands of Georgians are losing their health care. But, you know, if you ask me, one human life is way more important and more valuable than every single statue combined in this state. But sure, let's talk about statues. So many of the monuments this bill wants to preserve were built to glorify a dark time in our state's past. When Georgia purchased the site of Stone Mountain, it was explicitly designated as a memorial to the Confederacy because it was officially opened on April 14th, 1965, 100 years to the day of Abraham Lincoln's assassination. If we go further back, in the 1910s and 20s, there was a huge surge in Confederate monuments, which so happened to coincide with the huge surge of the Ku Klux Klan, which peaked in the 1920s. In fact, the statue of former KKK leader John Brown Gordon outside his building was raised in 1907, not to record history for posterity, but to idolize the racist, lost cause ideals he stood for. By contrast, there are only 2 portraits and 1 statue for historically important black figures in Georgia. These Confederate monuments are not objects of history. They are racist propaganda carved into stone. There's a difference between remembering past horrors so we don't repeat them and honoring them. As was mentioned earlier, Germany did this great with denazification. They didn't erect statues of Adolf Hitler and Nazis. They took them down and taught the horrors of the Holocaust. Maybe we can learn a thing or two about that. The working families of Georgia are not interested in statues of old racists and do not care about sanctifying national flags of the Confederacy. They want a government that works for them now in today's day and age. And one more thing, when this bill was heard in committee, there were some comments about, starting a race war. The only people trying to start a race war are the ones pushing this stuff to protect Confederate monuments and idolize slave owners. It's been over 160 years. Can we please move on? A reminder that you lost the war And a reminder that the only reason we have some of my colleagues in this chamber is because that war was won by the Union. So let's actually move on and focus on the work that the people of Georgia living today asked us to work on. Thank you. I yield the well.
Representative Miller. There she is. I couldn't find you. Ladies recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to speak briefly as a great-granddaughter of the South. Anybody else here a great-granddaughter, grandson of the South? Great. Our blood is in the soil. So let me say this, and I want to be really clear, as we are dismissive, and I am actually flabbergasted at the celebrated ignorance of your own history with the level of dismissal and disdain. It is shocking, and we should all be embarrassed for every person in this body that considers themselves a statesman or a stateswoman or a student of history. Let me tell you something. If you have read American history and you have read the Bible, you would understand that there is no history of slavery like American slavery. American slavery is what we call chattel slavery. Chattel slavery, to anybody who might be wondering, did not exist in the Bible, because you know what slaves in the Bible were? People, human beings, indentured servants, forced laborers. They were not, in essence, property to be murdered, raped, sold, stolen, and declared in the Constitution 3/5 of a human being. So let me be really clear. The Civil War was fought over slavery. The people who we are memorializing in these Confederate monuments went to war with their own countrymen over slavery, over the right to own another person, to force women to have babies and breed, to buck break black men. We will not, in this moment, and I know we're getting close to the end and we get a little squirrely, but what we will not do is skate past the history of my ancestors, my history in this country, a people stolen from across the ocean, many of whom chose the sea rather than to become property of the folks that you seek to defend and memorialize and create litigation avenues to. It is a sad, sad day in this chamber. These remarks were inexcusable. We should all be saddened and ashamed of ourselves as we continue to try to limit teaching history. Why? Because we want to get away with rewriting it. We're not talking about a war. We're talking about centuries of mass murder. That is my granddaughter's story of the South. And let me say this, because I'm going to pivot real quick because I only have a minute. The notion that we have not even considered the constitutionality of making standing so flimsy that anybody could wake up in the morning and decide they want to sue. That's not how the Constitution works. If you're a lawyer in this chamber, you know that is not how standing works. You have to have an injury in fact, not one in your imagination, not a preference. An injury, a constitutional one, concrete, that allows you to invoke the authority of the judicial branch. This is an awful sad day. We could have done a lot of things. We could have required that these monuments be placed where they belong, and that is in a museum to be studied like every other civilized country does. But we are still waging wars with the ghosts of a past and a war that was lost. lost for the purpose of treating men and women and babies as human beings. And you will not, in my face, in the faces of my brothers and sisters and countrymen and children of the South, pretend like what happened down here was biblical and of God. It is a disgrace. I'm going to ask my colleagues to reflect deeply on what just happened from this well today, just feet away from me. I'm glad my grandmother is not alive in 2026 to hear what came from this well moments ago. Now, y'all are going to pass this bill because you're going to do what you do. But let me tell you something else. We'll see you in court. Mr. Speaker, I yield.
The ladies yield the wheel. Representative Carter. Representative Doreen Carter is recognized to speak to the bill.
Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. Mr. Speaker, colleagues, I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 175. Let me be clear. This is not a debate about history. History is not fragile. It does not need to be protected by a statue. History lives in our books, in our classrooms, in our communities, and in the truth we are willing to confront. What this bill attempts to do is not to preserve history, it attempts to freeze it. It prioritizes monuments over people and symbols over honest dialogue. We must ask ourselves, who decides what deserves protection? And more importantly, who bears the burden of that decision? Many of these monuments were erected simply to commemorate history. Many of these monuments were not erected simply to commemorate history, but to send a message during painful periods in our nation's past. You just heard the pain. For many Georgians, these symbols do not represent heritage. They represent exclusion, oppression, and a version of history that leaves their story out. As elected leaders, our responsibility is not to mandate reverence of the past, but to create a space for truth, growth, and unity. Local communities should have the right to decide what stands in their public spaces. That is the essence of good governance, trusting the people closest to the issue. This bill removes that local control, it silences communities, and it tells them that their voices matter less than concrete and stone. We cannot legislate healing by ignoring pain. If we truly want to honor history, we must be willing to engage with it fully, the good, the bad, and the uncomfortable. Georgia is strong enough to tell the whole story, and I'll end with this. My mother's sister left Georgia when she was in her early 20s and traveled with her husband who was in the military. And she called my house after I bought my first house to get my address because my cousin was living with me. And I gave her my address in the city, Stone Mountain. And she panicked because she remembered. Maybe some of you may not like me. I grew up here in Atlanta. I grew up in Georgia. So the pain is real. And for someone who had not lived in the state for over 20 years, just hearing that I lived in Stone Mountain did something to her. So I hope that you guys can understand that, again, this is not just about monuments. It is not about history. It's really about pain. Are you willing to feel the pain? Please vote no. I yield the will.
That concludes our time. For those opposed to the House bill Senate Bill 175. We will have a minority report. We have one member who wants to speak in favor of the bill, and he will have up to 15 minutes. Representative Holly is recognized to speak in favor of the bill.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, you might find it surprising that I or anyone sitting where I sit would even speak in favor of this bill. Is it because that I'm sold on the utility of these stone and metal relics, these attempts to freeze a historical perspective by men who feared they would never live the storied lives of the heroes they cast in bronze? My answer is no. Is it because I hold an ounce of admiration for the factions of the 1860s listed in the text? Certainly not. I rise because I intend to highlight all the monuments this bill inadvertently addresses. When we deliberated on Senate Bill 77 back in 2019, we attempted to handle the preservation of history. The sponsor reminds us today that this bill is meant to protect all monuments. For that reason, I'm particularly appreciative of its impact on our state's timber and agricultural industries. I'm reminded of the freedom trees across the South and right here in Georgia. Specific oaks stand as designated freedom trees. It was beneath their shade that the Union officers read General Order Number 3, which we know today as the Emancipation Proclamation, to those enslaved Africans who never could witness a sight like that. Under this bill, these trees cannot be cut down, they cannot be moved, they cannot even be obscured. They receive the same strict legal protections as bronze monuments. The Georgia Tree Council has identified these as silent witnesses. Meanwhile, one state over, Brian Stevenson's Equal Justice Initiative has documented 531 lynchings across the counties of the state of Georgia. When local communities choose to revere these sites of historic barbarity, where the towering branches witnessed the strange fruit that Billie Holiday so hauntingly eulogized, Senate Bill 175 will ensure those sites remain immune and untouched. If we are protecting history, does this bill's sponsor intend to protect the history of the soil as fiercely as we protect the history of the pedestal? We speak of fixed monuments, but let us reflect on the living monuments. Inside this Capitol, we are surrounded by the marble busts of men whose tragic legacies are undermined every single day by the very existence of this chamber. Take, for instance, Button Gwinnett or Lyman Hall. Gwinnett, a man who failed in business but succeeded in defying the gospel's command to love thy neighbor, believed himself justified in the kidnapping and ownership of Africans. His bust sits in the rotunda. But the monument that matters is the county that now bears his name. Today, Gwinnett County is home to one of the nation's most vibrant immigrant-born communities. Freeborn Africans, Indians, Pakistanis, Greeks, Asians, even a Republican leader, now shop and build on homes of land that once held the torture cages of a precursor to apartheid. That is what you call a living monument. Look at Lyman Hall, whose statue was meant to symbolize a Georgia pride rooted in human trafficking. He likely hoped that this state would never see a free person like myself roam its streets. But look at Hall County today. Look at Beulah Rucker Oliver, who used Rosenwald funds to educate the masses. Look at Dr. Emmett Etheridge, the grandson of the enslaved who served on the Gainesville Board of Education, a reality that would have been absolutely unintelligible to the masters of that era. What is a monument in 2026? The sponsor suggests that these are safeguards of history. In reality, many are merely altars for bird droppings. The best way to safeguard history is to allow it to show its relevance through contrast. This Capitol is filled with images of those who trafficked humans, betrayed their nation, or simply lost a war. And yet, those statues now stand watch over a body of black legislators that is arguably the largest in the entire United States, ranked number one for business. Our state is, because of their presence and participation. When this bill passes, and I said when, I didn't say if, I said when this bill passes, it will provide us the liberty of being reminded why we are so much better off today than the horrors of our past. Living monuments win when a young Pakistani man is elected as the youngest to this legislature. Living monuments win when the descendants of the enslaved oversees the budget of our House Minority Caucus. And yes, living monuments win when one of the smartest women in our chambers stands to be the next Attorney General. Hear me clearly, especially those watching from home. While I can respect the sponsor of this bill, as difficult as sometimes it may seem, and while my words today take an affirmative position on the passage of this bill, I am currently wrestling with the spirit of this law. This bill is what the majority often describes as a divisive concept. And I am currently struggling. I'm struggling with the intent to divide this body once again. Mr. Speaker, my fellow members, I only pray that I can resolve this uncertainty when it comes time to cast my vote on that board. I now yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? Hearing none, the previous question is ordered. We'll now have a minority report in chairman's time, 20 minutes, up to 20 minutes on each of those. I recognize Representative Kendrick for the first part of the minority report. The lady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I come to you today not only as a Democrat, but as an attorney. And because of that, I ask you to vote no on SB 174. As an attorney practicing for almost 20 years, I need you to hear me clearly about what lines 61 through 88 of this bill actually do. Not what you think it does, but what it actually does. Because the legal consequences are severe, and they will fall hardest on the very public servants that many of you champion and support back in your communities. So let's talk about standing. In American jurisprudence, standing is a foundational legal doctrine. It exists for a reason. Before you can sue anyone, you must show that you were harmed. You must have a real, concrete, particularized injury. That is not a technicality. That is the guardrails that we put in our courts to prevent our courts from being weaponized, overcrowded, and inefficient. This bill throws the guardrails right on off the cliff with a vengeance. Lines 61 through 88 grant standing to any interested person, group, or legal entity without regard to ownership of the monument and without a specialized or personalized injury. Let me say that again. Without regard to ownership of the monument and without any specialized or personalized injury. You don't have to own the monument. You don't have to be harmed. You don't even have to have an actual interest in the monument. You simply have to be interested in the monument. I'm interested in removing every single Confederate Federate here in the state of Georgia. So let's go if this bill passes. But being interested in a monument is not a legal standard. That is an open invitation to litigation for our public officers and local government entities. Now, let's talk about who gets sued under this flimsy grant of standing. So who gets sued under this provision? Officers, agencies, public servants, county commissioners making budget decisions, city managers following direction of their councils, elected officials responding to the will of their constituents. Under this language, any one of them doing their job can be dragged into a court by anyone in the state of Georgia who simply decides they have an opinion about a monument. Now let's talk about the damages provision, because you think this bill couldn't get worse, but it does. It actually does the longer that you read it. So this bill doesn't just allow for a lawsuit by anybody, anywhere. It mandates that the prevailing plaintiff shall recover attorney's fees, litigation expenses, and exemplary damages. Exemplary damages. Punitive in nature. I'm not a litigator, but when I was a litigator, attorney's fees and litigation costs and expenses was standard, but exemplary damages? Y'all are just being mean and greedy at this point. Against exemplary damages against public officers, against agencies, against the governments that you represent. I really wonder how those in your backyard feel about this as an option for them. So to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, you spent time I cannot get back last year fighting against what you termed frivolous litigation. You have tort reform even when nobody asked for it. You claimed during tort reform that you were fighting for small businesses because, as the allegation goes, Georgia was becoming too litigious in premises liabilities and personal injury suits. So I'm asking you, how is this any different? Seriously, you're creating a private right of action with no injury threshold and mandatory fee shiftings against public officials? That is not conservative legal philosophy. That is the most expensive litigation mechanism that I've seen introduced in this chamber in 16 years. So think about your county commissioners. Vote no on this bill, no to SB 175, no to opening the floodgates of litigation for local officials and communities, not because of monuments, but because the rule of law and legal predictability and stability should matter in this chamber, because of the standing doctrine matter. The standing doctrine matters, because you can't say you oppose a lawsuit abuse on Monday and then vote for unlimited standing on Tuesday. So protect your local elected officials, protect your counties, protect legal integrity, and vote no. Thank you, Mr.
Ladies yielded well. Representative Mitchell. Representative Billy Mitchell is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, colleagues, and even my friend, the author of this bill. I want to say I do too stand in opposition to Senate Bill 175, which not only allows anyone to file a lawsuit without demonstrating personal harm, the bill explicitly reinforces protections for monuments such as those tied to the Confederate States of America, including permanently safeguarding the carving at Stone Mountain. Stone Mountain Park sits in the middle of my district. On paper, this is presented as a preservation measure, but in reality, It prioritizes symbols of a painful oppression, history over the well-being of communities living alongside them today. The late Maynard Jackson would say, "New times create new duties." By cementing their permanence, the state sends a message that the feelings and needs of many communities are secondary to preserving monuments that represent oppression. Since we've talked about history, let me give you some. 1955 it was. There was a young lady named Rosa Parks who decided to take a stand by keeping her seat. She started what is now known as the nonviolent movement, led by Martin Luther King Jr., who grew up just blocks from this building. Finally, because of what was going on, the United States Supreme Court made a ruling that segregation on public transportation was no longer allowed. The Georgia General Assembly, yes, the Billy Mitchells and Alan Powells of that day, did two things. The first thing they did was they were so incensed by the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling that they put the Confederate stars and bars on our state flag. We have since removed that. But they did something else. The longest street in Georgia left the Capitol's steps and went all the way to the gates of Stone Mountain Park, which at that time was not only the regular meeting place of the Ku Klux Klan, but it was a memorial to the Confederacy, which it remains to this day. And they renamed that street from Fair Street to Memorial Drive, where many of you will ride on today. Stone Mountain Park used to be a revenue center for the state. As a matter of fact, it was the second most visited park on the entire East Coast, only exceeded by Disney World. Today, because of what is going on at the park, it has become a drain to the taxpayers in this state. The amount of money that we have to place in the budget every year increases to sustain Stone Mountain Park, and what it has done to our main street as a result is unconscionable. This is not a question of erasing history. History can be remembered, studied, honored. Heck, you can put it in museums, you can put bumper stickers, heck, you can wrap your car. This bill undermines the ability of local governments to respond thoughtfully to the concerns of their constituents. This approach stifles community-led change. It freezes our state in a static version of history rather than allowing public spaces to reflect evolving values and a commitment to equity. It risks prolonging conflict instead of resolving it, placing unnecessary strain on local governments and undermining public trust. Our responsibility is to protect both civil rights and public safety while supporting communities as they make decisions about the spaces they live in. I just ask, how would you want to be remembered in history? Your vote will reflect that, and I urge you, this body, to vote no on Senate Bill 175. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield.
Gentleman is yielded the bill. Representative Holcomb, recognized to speak to the bill. Representative Holcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 175. It's terrible. I'll tell you why. Saying that this is akin to being viewpoint neutral is akin to saying that separate but equal was a good thing. It's a joke. It's nonsense. And claiming that this is what would apply to all monuments is also nonsense. There isn't dispute and debate over Vietnam veterans memorials. There isn't dispute and debate over World War II memorials. Why? Because we fought on the same side. This is only for those that are for Confederate memorials, and anybody that claims otherwise just isn't telling you the truth. This is to overturn a Supreme Court case. That's what this is. And that Supreme Court case was lost by the sons of Confederate veterans. Let me go through this with you, because the text of it is among the worst I've ever seen in my time here. This bill affords more rights to concrete people than real people. Let me tell you how. It provides for treble and exemplary damages. For real people in real cases when they are hurt, it is next to impossible to get exemplary or treble damages, and we're putting that in here in statute for monuments. Think about that. We are also waiving sovereign immunity. We rarely, if ever, do that, but we're doing it here in this case. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? We don't waive sovereign immunity for real people, and we're doing it here. Attorney's fees, all these expenses, I am a litigator. It's very rare to get those. In fact, you can only get them if it's provided by statute or by a contract. Otherwise, each side pays its own freight. But here, no. Let's just hand out attorney's fees and have the taxpayer pay for it. This bill also requires that these monuments be stored. What is this? Confederate Monuments Hoarders Edition? And then even more, if you go on to the end of the bill, check this out. Lines 139 to 142. It will treat private property as public property. Is this socialism, Confederate Monuments Edition? Like, what are we doing? This really is the worst bill that I've seen in my time here. Vote no and end this joke. Thank you.
The gentleman is yielded to the well. Representative Willis is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good evening, colleagues. Our speaker often states that a story that is not often told is forgotten. So let's tell it. Each day, my colleagues walk past Confederate monuments to walk into this chamber. Each day. They look down, and we look up, and we eat that pain and walk in here to serve. Last year, Clarence Thomas Monument Bill was supposed to come. Didn't. Every year. I haven't been here very long, but I've been here long enough to know this. Monuments should not be more important than hungry children, than budgets increasing in education. You're more concerned about monuments and preservation and them being uprooted, and less concerned about uprooting curriculum that tells the story. Let me tell you about Mary Turner, a black woman who was 8 months pregnant. 8 months pregnant. 8 months pregnant. Almost ready to deliver. Lynched by a white mob in Valdosta, Georgia. Then burned. Then mutilated. Then shot. Wanna know why? For protesting the lynching of her husband. Where's her monument? Where's this conversation? So let me get this straight. It's erasure for some, but it's celebration for others. Fannie Lou Hamer said a black woman's body has never been her own. And let me tell you how I know. Because when you have to surrender to a sadistic owner, a serial rapist, and breed, and breed, and breed, and breed, and breed, 2-3 generations later, you're looking at what that looks like. So I'm the descendant of the slave and the slave owner. You don't come up here and casually mention how to litigate oppression, who should feel what way about slavery. How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? Not when our ancestors built this country on their backs. You want to list presidents? George Washington had dentures made of teeth of enslaved people that he owned. How sick, how sick, how sick. Now, this may seem like something simple for you to push a button on, but enough is enough, because I've never seen such sore winners. I've never seen such sore winners. What more do you wish for in this moment with control of the chamber? What more? No shame, no empathy culturally, and removing culture from schools to pacify what? To make who feel better? What about us? What about us? We show up here just like you every day. And you may not know what your ancestors did in the Civil War for the people who are also sore losers, if that's a trend, but we do. And they went against their own people in their own country. So if you want to celebrate tyranny and not bring a modicum of decency to this floor, but you do not get to toss enslavement and one of the world's greatest sins casually in our faces and expect not to hear anything. We are tired. We represent constituents just like you. And I will leave you with this. Those monuments we can see, but I'll tell you what you can't see. Unmarked graves. Unmarked graves in Buckhead. I made a list. Unmarked graves of enslaved people in LaGrange, Georgia. In Alpharetta, 1,000. In Macon, Georgia. All across this state right now. Unmarked. Many homes been built on top of them. Some of you may own one. There's no monuments for them. And as my sister said earlier, for those who chose the sea, tipped over, pregnant, left their children, took them with them, went down to the bottom of the ocean and changed rather than face the uncertainty of what was here. But God, we are still here today, and we will be the voice for them when our other colleagues will not. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Lady has yielded the well. That completes our minority report. Chairman's time's waived. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? Hearing none, the report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will. You objected at the appropriate time? State your objection.
I was trying to be recognized, Mr. Speaker, and I was trying to get your attention, and I'd like to be recognized for a motion.
State your motion. I'll recognize you for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to move that Senate Bill 175 be laid on the table.
The gentleman who moves. Gentleman moves. Gentleman moves. Okay, here's where we go. We'll vote this motion. There's been a motion made to by the minority leader to lay this Senate Bill 175 on the table. All those in favor of placing the bill on the table will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and Mr. Clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? For what purpose is Chairman Powell rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it not true that after this vibrant debate from both sides, that I would prefer that this bill to be voted by the members of this House either up or down so that we can put this bill to bed?
We're going to total the votes here in just a second. For what purpose does Chair Lady Hughley rise? Excuse me, Minority Leader Hughley.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
State your inquiry, ma'am.
Mr. Speaker, isn't it true that we have sat here and we have heard a lot this afternoon, but clearly this bill is not ready to be put before us, and we should not waive the sovereign immunity of the state of Georgia for this?
There have been lots of points made this afternoon, and I'm sure the lady is listening intently as well as I have. So all right, all members now voted. All members voted. So, Mr. Clerk will unlock the machine. Lock the machine. On the lady's motion to table Senate Bill 175, the yeas are 172, the nays are 91. The motion fails. Now, we're going to move on forward with the motion. I'll go back to where I was. All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no. And Mr. Clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? For what purpose is Representative Cannon rise? She waves. Your light's on if you don't mind pushing your button, taking your light off. Thank you. Well, you've had lots of time to talk today, so other folks like to speak too. Have all members voted? All members voted. If so, Mr. Clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of Senate Bill 175, the yeas are 89, the nays are 73. This bill has failed to receive the requisite constitutional majority, and therefore fails. I want to recognize Chairman Irwin for a motion. That y'all may want to hear this motion. Chairman Irwin recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ooh.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House agree to the Senate amendment to HB 1193.
Gentleman's recognized again.
Let me correct that, members. I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 1193.
It's monumental. Mr. Clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 1193 by Representative Irwin and the 32nd and others to be entitled an act to amend Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to education so as to promote and advance statewide literacy in reading education efforts.
Chairman Irwin is recognized to explain the Senate substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm very excited to be before you today. What just occurred in the chamber across from us and what we've done in the work of this body is going to impact this state for decades past here. We have mentioned to you most impactful and meaningful legislation that we've taken up educationally in this House is the Georgia Early Literacy Act. And I want to talk to the the amendments and changes to this substitute here within the chamber across the hall. We have moved the funding for this program from QBE allotment sheet to the QBE grants program. And then we have the sunset, the Literacy Council set now for December of 2026. So based on what we developed in this House, you can hear very quickly that this is still a very productive bill for our young people in this House. Let me play teacher, Mr. Speaker, if I can, just for a minute. And I think I know the answer to this. If you have read something in this room today, raise your hand for me. If you read something today, raise your hand. Somebody taught you to read. Somebody worked with you. You've got the skill that you're using for your job. Our young people deserve exactly what you have, and they deserve it by third grade. This plan before you that we have developed is going to ensure that that happens for our third graders. And I mentioned this to you when I was up here to you last time. Watch how our children in our schools change when they can read on grade level. Watch how our society changes when our adults have gone through school and read better in this state. Look at how our jails change in our prisons in what occurs. I want to do this just for a minute again, Mr. Speaker. If you're on the Education Committee, stand up for a moment, please. I want y'all to look around the room at the groups that have vetted this bill. And I want to personally stand up here and thank you, members, for the hard work and the dedication. What your productivity, members, that you put through here in this piece of paper, that chamber right across the hall voted in 49-0 with only 2 small changes. That ought to tell you about your work and your dedication. I also want to look around the room. Miss Dale Burns, where are you? Folks, retired principal, understands this subject and this need. Now, I know he had a little pushing, but if you see the gentleman right next to him, Mr. Speaker's vision for this and his drive to ensure it happened, to make it priority number 1 because he could see where we needed to be. He recognized the problem. He put the team together, and that team is sitting in this room. It's all of us, so that we could make this happen. So I personally want to say up here too, Mr. Speaker, thank you for that drive and your vision. This is a big component and a big step. Took a lot of great minds to make this happen. Chairman Dubnik, thank you. Thank you for the friendship. Thank you for your knowledge, understanding of the funding, and the wording that we need to put in to make this happen in the state. Chairman Hickman over in the Senate, traveling all over Alabama, traveling all over the Southeast with me. Tremendous effort. Thank you, Chairman, for this effort. I've seen Courtney, Andrew, Patrick. I can go around the room, and I'm doing this intentionally so that you know how many hours. It's been asked, how many hours did we work trying to figure this out? How many places did we go? How many miles did we travel? There's no way to really estimate that. But I will guarantee you it was a lot of hours and a lot of miles traveled to try to figure what's best. I heard it over there in the Senate when it was mentioned by a senator, Senator Hickman, you probably heard it in the back, about we hear Mississippi's gone from dead last or 49th in this country up into the top 10 in their literacy rates. How did they do it? Did we look at that? Can we mimic that? Can we give that to our kids? The answer here is yes, we can. Thank you for your efforts on this. What I'd like to ask you to do is vote with me for our children and vote yes for this substitute from the Senate. And then let's ring that bell that if you can't read in this state, we're coming to help. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Before I recognize the gentleman's motion, I want to certainly, he thanks everyone else. Chairman Irwin, thank you for your lifelong dedication to education. Members of this House, we have ups and downs. We agree, we disagree from time to time. But on issues that can make generational change in our state. It's not about any one person in this House that's worked on this bill, spent time. It's not about the Senate. But I will tell you, you've been steadfast, the members of this House, both parties, from all over this state, rural Georgia, urban Georgia, big cities, small towns. This House has stood fast to make a difference in our future, Georgia's future. This bill, House Bill 1193, will be transformational. And we're going to stay with it, y'all. We're going to get it done. This is a first huge step. The credit goes to the members of this House, our friends in the Senate. But the initiative began here, and it was carried forward here. So thank you, all the members of this House. Let's do one more round of applause for the Georgia House of Representatives and you, our members. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 1193, all those in favor will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no. And Mr. Clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? All members voted? Boy, that's a nice sight. If so, Mr. Clerk will lock the machine. On the gentleman's motion, the yeas are 168, the nays are 0. And the House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 1193. Congratulations, House. Congratulations, man. Job well done, members. Thank you, Whip Park. Thank you, Leader Hughley. Thank you. Thank you, Billy Hickman, Senator Billy Hickman. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you. Love y'all. Thank you to Whip Burchett, Leader F. Strachan, all the members of leadership, all the members. It's pretty awesome. Thank you all so much. Let's take a picture.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, members. Representative Ballard, you've been a big part of this. Would you come up? While she's coming up, we had we were busy, so we didn't recognize further Representative Farmer. I'll get it out there in a minute. I'm kind of excited about getting literacy passed, y'all. Former Representative Ralph Long, he may have had to leave the chamber. Is Representative Long still here? He served a few years ago. I think he had to step out, so we wanted to recognize he was here. He's here from here in Atlanta. Now, we're going to break for a dinner after we have an announcement or two. We're going to have dinner. We have taco bar. Some of y'all already found that taco bar. We're going to have a taco bar set up out in the ante room for dinner. Thanks to all those put that together. Let's see. We have an announcement from the Chairman of Rules. Chairman Parrish is recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the members of the Rules Committee to meet me in room 341 at 7:30. 7:30 in room 341. Thank you.
Chairman Crow. Gentleman has an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee, we will have a very, very quick meeting tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. in CLOB 506. Tomorrow, 11 a.m., CLOB 506, we have one amendment to make to one bill, and that will be it. Thank you.
Members, I have an announcement we need some help on. Representative Edna Jackson has misplaced a laptop. It is in a yellow bag with a laptop in it. If you've accidentally picked it up or if you've seen someone who may have placed it someplace, please, please return that to Representative Jackson. We need your help on that one. Members, we will stand in recess. Help yourself to dinner. Great tacos. Help yourself to tacos. This house will be in recess until 8 o'clock sharp p.m. 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock.